We're joined now by our senior advisor, again, for foreign policy and national security, Ric Grenell, who was just in Serbia and Albania. And Rick, I guess, was it while you were traveling back or even while you were still there that now there's been NATO troop involvement in Kosovo? And I just wanted you to explain to kind of people, it's kind of a reminder when they hear Kosovo, and for those who remember, I mean, they kind of think back to the 1990s, which may have been the last time they really focused it on it. But kind of remind people again about why it's significant that NATO troops, and I think that involves some U.S. troops as well, are having to take over parts of Kosovo and government offices in Kosovo.
Yeah, so what we've had in the NATO forces is they've been on the outskirts, away from specific areas where Kosovo and Serbia have had some tensions. And what happened over the last couple of days is that the prime minister of Kosovo, who is just a radical, he decided to force his people into municipal buildings in a section of Kosovo that is governed by Serbs. It's a little complicated, but within this area of Kosovo, it is a highly majority Serb area, and past agreements between the EU and the US have said in order to not inflame tensions, let's go slow on this area. Let's figure out how people can live next to each other. But for now, no one should be pushing the limits. And the prime minister of Kosovo decided to send in his people and take over an area that is majority Serbs, which inflamed tensions. The EU has condemned the prime minister of Kosovo's actions. Anthony Blinken has condemned the prime minister of Kosovo's actions. Many Trump administration officials, former officials, have done the same. And so what happened over the weekend is that NATO troops moved into the area to protect the buildings, and skirmishes and fighting began. And we should be very clear that violence against anyone is wrong, especially NATO troops that are there designed to keep the peace. I have been very vocal about calling upon the Serbian government as well as the government in Kosovo to dial back their rhetoric, dial back all of their belligerent actions, mainly from the prime minister of Kosovo. It's been a real problem. But this matters to our listeners because it's mainly American troops. These are Iowa National Guard troops that are under the jurisdiction of NATO, and they're the ones that are patrolling now. And the American people are paying for this. I believe that the solution has always been for American leadership, but Joe Biden, after the Trump administration, decided that his policy would be to remove the American leadership and let the Europeans take 3 years and try to figure it out. And by all practical purposes, the situation has gotten worse.
But you've done a lot of work in this part of the world, Rick, and I remember when you kind of started doing that work outside of the administration in a private capacity, and you kept doing the work that you did inside the administration, that there were a lot of positives happening between that. It wasn't like things were perfect, but it was on a positive track. It kind of reminded me of like the Abraham Accords. There was positive movement. It didn't mean that things are going to be perfect yet, but that these former maybe enemies were becoming more and more interested in working together or economic agreements together, and maybe dialing back the idea of having to be violent, and that being the only solution for either side is to somehow, attack the other side using violence. So it seems like, is that what, when you say like the Biden administration just kind of it feels like they just gave up a lot of things that the Trump administration and people like you worked on really and got things to a point that you handed it back off to them, but they just let it go.
Look, when the Trump administration was in, there was a perceived conflict, and many Western companies weren't investing in the Balkans because of this perceived conflict. We made a lot of progress to show people that it was a phony conflict, that there might be hard feelings on both sides, but that they were beginning to work together. The Biden administration came in, and let me be very clear, the Europeans did not want the Trump administration taking the lead in the Balkans. They were complaining. They said to the Biden team, this is our area. We're in charge. We've been in charge for 20 years. The Americans should back off. And so I've said on this program a lot that the opposite of America First is consensus with the Europeans. Joe Biden decided to have consensus with the Europeans, let the Europeans take back control of the Balkans process. And you see what's happened. Now you've got Europeans condemning the prime minister of Kosovo. No one in Europe or in America or in the Balkans thinks that the situation is better under Joe Biden. They know the situation was much better under Donald Trump.
It was interesting. I saw Novak Djokovic, who's a famous tennis player, and he just won his first round match at the French Open. They write on the cameras, and so he's from Serbia, and he wrote, Kosovo is the heart of Serbia. Stop the violence. For someone he is Serbian. So for him to say that, could you break down even that kind of statement by him?
Well, look, there is a section within Kosovo of Serb majority. And what we've always tried to do is to say, let's talk through who governs that area. Since it's Serb majority, the Serbs should be making the decisions locally. But you've got to understand, too, is that this is under the government of Kosovo, the federal government, so to speak. It's within Kosovo. And so there's this push by the Kosovo government to take totally control over these people and to do it their way, so to speak. And so the problem exists is that within this area of Kosovo, the highly Serbian majority is also an area that has very significant religious Orthodox churches and meaning to many people in Serbia. So they feel like they should be free to go and to have this movement. Look, I agree that people should be able to live next door to each other when they don't agree. There should be total free flow of movement. We've got to get to that. But I also believe that the way to do that is to get them working together, building economic programs together, creating jobs for young people, not sitting around a table and trying to figure out who likes each other and demanding that you like each other. This whole idea of you must recognize me and you must not say negative things about me. Who cares if you like each other or not? I believe that the pathway of politicians forcing people to recognize or not de-recognize each other is a waste of time. We should be building infrastructures to create jobs for young people, get people working together economically. Then you can worry about how the hearts and minds change. But you can't force this hearts and minds change immediately. You can't demand that people like each other.
Yeah. Hey, Rick, I wanted to quickly bring up, because there's a lot of people watching right now, specifically about the topic of what was going on at the CUNY system and the speaker there. I know you maybe had some thoughts there and some comments of really what's coming up. You brought up having to work together, getting people jobs. When you see this coming out of the university system in America, it's pretty shocking.
It's so radical and shocking what's happening at the City University of New York. I don't understand how people in New York City, the largest city in America, can be so intolerant, and why political leaders in New York are allowing this intolerance. Look, I'm not saying that these radicals should be silenced. They have a right to their voice. But I don't believe that they have a right to spew this hate at a graduation ceremony. Where are the adults in the room? Why isn't the leadership at the City University of New York totally horrified and embarrassed that they have a speaker who is so intolerant and anti-Semitic that the speaker is celebrated in the ultimate ceremony of graduation? It's sad. It shows that New York City is filled with people who are so woke they don't see their own intolerance, and shame on them. And there should be high condemnation from both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, as always, Rick, we also really appreciate you educating us on those issues like Kosovo, which just remind people, because I think a lot of people just remember what was going on in the 90s. They know it's a place that's seen a lot of conflict, but then as you've been talking about on this show, we've been talking to people, things that were improving, and we hope that this is just is something that can improve quickly and the tensions settle back down. As always, Rick, we appreciate your insight into all these issues.